The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has decided to award Sveriges Riksbanks Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel 2023 to Professor Claudia Goldin.
The controversial 2023 Nobel Prize explained. Many social scientists across the globe have asked, why do women get paid less than men? And for decades, the answer has been to get rid of bias, discrimination, and biological differences. However, Claudia Goldin, the winner of the 2023 Nobel Prize in Economics, decided to look beyond these factors and boom! She figured out what most people have been getting wrong about this controversial economic issue. What did Goldin discover? And how can it influence social policies on gender? Before we get into that, do like this video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't. From the beginning of time, women have been largely underrepresented in the global labor market, and when they work, they earn less than men. This has led to one of the greatest economic issues with little progress. This is why Harvard economic historian Claudia Goldin won the 2023 Nobel Economics Prize with her work on exposing the cause of deeply rooted wage and labor market inequality between men and women. For years, Claudia Goldin has emptied the archives and collected decades-old facts from the U.S., allowing her to demonstrate how and why gender differences in earnings and employment rates have changed over time. In her books, she has been able to show that female participation in the labor market has not been stable over the last 200 years. This is because the participation of married women decreased with the transition from an agrarian to an industrial society in the early 19th century, but then started to increase with the growth of the service sector in the early 20th century. An increase that resulted from the structural change and evolving social norms regarding women's responsibilities for home and family. You would agree that in the 20th century, women's education levels increased greatly, and in most high-income countries, they are now substantially higher than for men. Now, it didn't just happen because women were advised to go to school. Instead, according to Goldin, access to contraceptive pills played an important role in this revolutionary change by offering women new opportunities for career planning. Yet, in spite of modernization, economic growth, and rising proportions of employed women in the 20th century, for a long period of time, the earnings gap between women and men hardly closed. This was an issue because if you're a female, you're lost. So Goldin decided to investigate the cause. And from what she got, part of the explanation is that educational decisions that impact a lifetime of career opportunities are made at a relatively young age. So, if the expectations of young women are formed by the experiences of previous generations, for instance their mothers, who did not go back to work until the children had grown up, then development will be slow. While it is illegal across most nations of the world for employers to discriminate based on gender, women still face significant shortfalls in pay compared to men. For instance, in the U.S., women last year earned on average 82% of what men earned, and in Europe, women earned 13% less per hour than men in 2021. Even though there has been progress in narrowing the gap over past decades, it is quite sad that there is little evidence of it fully closing anytime soon. This gap has been attributed to factors ranging from outright discrimination to greedy work, a term Goldin coined for jobs that pay more per hour when someone works longer or has less control over those hours, effectively penalizing women who would rather go for flexible labor. Over the years, Claudine Goldin has added quite a number of new phrases to economics, one of which is quiet revolution, a term she used to describe the dynamics of the gender gap in the labor market and the increase in labor force participation of married women in the U.S. in the 1970s. Interestingly, she was able to find the ingredients to this quiet revolution: investment in education and postponement of age at first marriage, which was helped by the launch of the contraceptive pill in the 1960s. What happened was that as the average age at which women married increased, that is, girls stopped getting married early, going to college became an important investment for them. Now, they could plan for an independent future and form their identities before marriage and family. This led to a strong push in women's participation in the labor market, because education is critical for participation in the labor market. So in most countries today, women with higher levels of education are more likely to be employed. Goldin's research spans many areas, including the economic history of women and education, the gender gap in earnings, income inequality, technological change, education, and immigration. In 2013, she was the president of the American Economic Association, where she made the increase of women as undergraduate majors one of her goals. But recently, her work has centered around the increased employment of older women. In her latest book, Career and Family: Women's Century-Long Journey Toward Equity, Goldin was outspoken. She made it clear that the converging roles of men and women are among the biggest advances in society and the economy in the last century. Then she asks, what does society need to do to ensure that there is equality in the labor market? And she provides an answer. The solution does not necessarily have to involve government intervention, and it doesn't also have to do with making men more responsible in the home, even though that wouldn't hurt. What would actually work is changes in the labor market, especially how jobs are structured in terms of time and pay to allow for flexibility. In summary, the gender gap in pay would be considerably reduced if companies did not reward employees who work long hours and particular hours when they are needed at home during dinner time for childcare and for other family responsibilities. So what can be done? Examining how workplaces are organized and how that influences the gender gap is another key insight of Goldin's work. Industries such as technology have seen changes in how work is organized that have increased employee flexibility, but this is not yet as common in the financial and legal worlds. For example, there is more work to be done to promote gender equality. Although Goldin's research mainly focuses on the U.S., her approach and insights have influenced and inspired researchers across the world. Her work has helped to make gender an essential ingredient in understanding how labor markets work, as well as how the economy works more generally. Well, there are many professions with flexible hours where men and women can perform the job equally well. For example, in industries where professionals of either gender can substitute for one another, like technology, science, and health. The solution is not to have women work only in those industries, but to make other sectors accommodate flexibility. Also, to reduce the gap in couple equity, where a working man has a higher pay than a working mother in the same family, which is one of those abnormal and yet unspoken issues if you ask me. Goldin suggests that companies should make flexible and part-time work more productive and better paid, and that governments should provide more generous childcare. Now, if you could read in between the lines, this no doubt means readdressing the pay gap will require revisiting the social norm that women are primarily responsible for child rearing. What do other experts think about Goldin's discoveries? In a review of Goldin's book, Professor Barry Eichengreen of the University of Berkeley points out that for much of the 20th century, the pay gap between women and men reflected discrimination, the consequences of marriage, differences in educational attainment, and occupational choices. In his opinion, today, those obstacles have been reduced, and the pay gap reflects other causes, including how childbirth and child rearing interrupt female labor force participation. Also, it reflects how women tend to choose employers and career paths that allow for flexibility and do not require overtime hours